Everyone knows what it is. But actually, this evening, ladies and gentlemen, this is a visual representation of an invisible backpack that each one of us carries around all day long and all evening long. This backpack contains things that we wish we had done, we should have done. Maybe we did and we shouldn't have done it. Anything that you're carrying around in your psyche and in your emotions, that needs a resolution. You need to come to peace. The thing about these items in here is if you don't take them out and deal with them, they're going to get heavier. I know you know what I mean. In my backpack, quite a few years ago, there was one that actually had a name that I'd like to tell you about. This rock, stone, whatever you want to call it, has a name. The name is Gayle Mingledorff. My father. Now, my parents divorced when I was 16, and that was the early 60s. And that was not a usual thing to happen back in the early 60s. And as a result, for many different reasons, I did not have a relationship with my father. We would see each other occasionally, but there was no closeness. You would not call it a relationship. As you might think, that was one of my rocks. And the longer I delayed dealing with this, the heavier and heavier it got. I was in my 40s, and all of a sudden that rock got so heavy I said, I've got to do this. I don't care when, where, I've got to deal with this because I'm tired of carrying it around. The morning after I came to this final resolution, I woke up early and I said, I have to go talk to my father. Called in sick to work. And as I said, I was in my 40s and this was the early 90s. Unfortunately, my father had died in the early 80s. Now what do? I've got to do something about this. Very simple. You go to the cemetery. You go to the cemetery. I was living in Atlanta, so that early that morning, I got in my car and headed to the booming metropolis of Ella Belle, Georgia. Down in South Georgia, about 20 miles west of Savannah. Got in my car, and unfortunately, there was this massive rainstorm going on. And it was raining, it was pouring, and I'm traveling, and I'm going, oh, I have got to be the craziest person in the world. I am traveling in the rain, going to sit in the rain in a cemetery and talk to a dead person. There's got to be a better way to do this. Couldn't figure it out. So by the time I hit Macon, which is about halfway between Atlanta and Ella Belle, all of a sudden, the rain stopped. And after that, the skies began to clear. And I tell you, by the time I got to Ella Belle, blue skies, puffy white clouds, and it was springtime. So there were azaleas, wisteria, all the flowers were blooming. Well, finally I found the cemetery. And it happened to be on a dead-end street, and it was across from our old family home. It was deserted, so I was there by myself. Here's the family cemetery, the home. I go in the gate, and I start walking around. Now, the cemetery is about maybe a little bit bigger than this room. I make one circle. I don't find a Mingledorff grave. I make another circle. I still don't see a Mingledorff grave. Now, I had gone to my family's burial, my father's burial, and I thought I remembered where the grave was. So I found this grave that I thought was the right spot, and it had a headstone, but it didn't have anything on it. And I thought, well, this must be it. I can't understand this, but I came to do this. I'm getting rid of that rock, so we're going to go. So I knelt down, and I asked for forgiveness. I forgave my father. And for 30 minutes, I actually emotionally just threw up all over this grave. I mean, everything came out. And you know what happens when you start that? It just keeps coming and it keeps coming. But I said everything I needed to say. Well, I was done. I was emotionally exhausted. And at that time, I was about ready to get up. And I happened to look over to the left. There was my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins' graves, and yes, my father's grave. I looked back down at this grave. All I could say was, I don't know who you are, but I am certain that somebody in your life needed to hear what I have to say. So what I want you to do is just take that and be forgiven and forgive, and wherever you have ended up, just go have a happy life. All right? Just go with it. All right. Done what I needed to do. Stand up, walk over to my father's grave, and I kneel down. I said, Daddy, did you hear what I said over there? I hope you did, because I cannot do this again. I am done. I am finished. So I hope you heard it, and I love you. Throw kisses, but I'm done. I cannot do this again. So I stand up, pick flowers, azaleas, put them on all my family's graves, and also put them on the grave of my new best friend. Get in the car and head back to Atlanta. On the way back, I started thinking, I don't know why I couldn't see those graves. But I couldn't. And also I thought, if I had actually been at my father's grave, could I have said what I said to that person who knows who they are? Could I have done it? I don't know. I really don't know. But I'll tell you one thing, because I started the process, the weight of this rock is gone. But there's another process you need to realize. It doesn't leave just one time. Next step was the weight got lighter. But feel this and see what it feels like. What does it feel like?
It feels spongy and prickly.
Prickly. It's prickly. You don't have the weight. But there's still work to do. So you keep going. And if you do, finally, you get to the point where you have a wonderful, beautiful ball that has no weight. Now, it stays with you because those incidents stay with you. But they no longer have this weight. It's a process, folks. You ought to try it sometime. When I got back to Atlanta, I was seeing a therapist at that time. And so I said, of course you have to tell your therapist this kind of story, right? And by the time I got to the fact that I was just doing my thing with the wrong person, She was about to fall out of the chair. And she looked at me and she said, Gayle, I never repeat anything that my clients tell me. But you have got to give me permission to tell this story. You have just got to. I said, oh, honey, go with it. And I tell you today, find whatever rock you've got. Start the process. And I bet you end up with a more interesting story than this one. Madam Contest Master.